Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. Chris Matthew. I'm having an awesome time here at the Laughlin UFO Megaconference. I'm here with Garnet Schulhauser, who had an amazing presentation. Garnet, how you doing? Or how you enjoying the conference?
Very much so, yeah. I'm doing just well, and thank you for the compliment.
Yeah. So, tell me, how are you enjoying the presentations here? Do you find that you relate to many of the contactees?
Yeah, I do actually, and the group of speakers here is just really quite amazing. I mean, they've done a really good job. The conference is very well organized, and I really love being here. So I'm very happy to be one of the participants, to one of the speakers.
Very good. Your presentation was about your astral travels with your spirit guide, Albert.
Yes.
Tell us about your first encounter with Albert. That was a very interesting story.
Right. Well, it was still when I was practicing law. I was practicing law, a corporate lawyer in Calgary, in Canada, and I was walking down the street one Sunday afternoon, and all of a sudden, this homeless man just literally jumped out of the shadows, stood right in front of me, and stopped me. And he looked like a typical homeless man because he had long, stringy hair and scraggly beard and dirty slept-in clothes. But I didn't sort of walk around him like I usually did when I encountered these people on the street, because most of the time they were panhandling for money. And I was back in those days, I was an arrogant, condescending corporate lawyer who didn't, I would think to myself about these people. I would think, why don't you get a job like the rest of us, you bum, and quit living on the street? So that was my awful attitude I had towards homeless people. So anyway, this homeless man was different because he had these amazing, dazzling blue eyes. And I felt like he was looking right into the depths of my soul. I felt like he knew everything about me, everything I'd ever said or done in my life, which was quite a surprise because I'd never met this man, never seen him before. But at the same time, he was sending me this wave of pure, unconditional love. His eyes were just beaming this towards me. It infused my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security and well-being. And so it was just a wonderful feeling. So I stood there like a deer caught in the headlights. Sort of, I was happy to just bask in the gaze from this man in his eyes. And then he broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" Then he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. And so I stood there for a while, kind of stunned, and then I finally collected my wits, and I thought, I better go find this guy, find out who he is. So I went into the store to find him, nowhere to be seen. So I walked out of the store, and I walked up and down for several blocks, hoping to spot him, but he had disappeared into thin air. So I walked back to my office, and I thought to myself, I've got to come back the next day to try to find this man, because my curiosity was just going wild, like, who was he? How did he have these amazing eyes and all that sort of thing, So next day, very same street, very same time, I went to find him. I walked up and down for 15 or 20 minutes, couldn't see him. I was about to give up, and finally I spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. So I went up to him and I said, "Who are you, and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "Well, I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." So then my skeptical lawyer brain kicked in. Once you're a lawyer, you never get rid of your lawyer brain. So I said to him, "Why do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because you look like you've been sleeping on the street for weeks and you smell like a dead fish." And he just gave me a big smile and he said, "Looks can be deceiving, because you look like you're a very successful corporate lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade."
Right.
He said, "You know what? If you want to, turn around, go back to your office and see if you can find the answers you've been seeking on all those emails waiting for you on your computer." And of course, he knew there would be no answers. Emails would be from my clients wanting something done.
Right.
So he said, "Yeah, go ahead if you want. You don't have to talk to me." My intuition luckily said, "I need to talk to this man. I mean, what did I have to lose? Half an hour of my day?" So I sat down on the bench and we began a dialogue with him that went off and on for several months. He told me his name was Albert, and he was really one of my spirit guides. And so we had this conversation, this Q&A dialogue that went on, as I say, for several months. He manifested himself as the homeless man for just the first 3 encounters that we had. And after that, he was just a voice in my head. And when I asked him why he showed up initially as the homeless man, he said, "Well, if I had just started talking to you as a voice in your head, out of the blue, you probably would have thought you're losing your mind.
Right.
So this was his way of gently introducing me into the conversation with him. And then he told me something else that was surprising. He said that I was the only one who could see him as the homeless man. So if somebody had been walking by the bench that day, they would have seen me sitting all alone on the bench talking to myself because I couldn't see Albert.
And I found it interesting, and then some of the other people that was sitting around me, noticed that the depiction of Albert looked very similar to Jesus.
Yeah, and that's yeah, and that's true. I was trying to find I didn't have a camera with me, so I couldn't take his picture. And I suspect that even if I tried, nothing would have showed up. So I was trying to find on the internet something that looked similar to Albert. Couldn't find anything. That was the closest. It's not a close approximation, other than he had long hair and a beard. But yeah, it's sort of that wasn't a great depiction. But without a sort of an actual photograph, that's the best I could go on. But he was he had long hair and a beard and blue eyes and very sort of dirty clothes, but I couldn't find anything that sort of even came close. So
Right.
Unfortunately, I had to use one of those pictures, which was probably what somebody depicted as Jesus, but nobody knows what Jesus really looked like.
Yeah.
People are just saying, well, we think this is what he looks like, and some of the art from the medieval ages, where the people would paint pictures of Jesus and that sort of thing. That's sort of how they depicted him. So who knows what he really looks like? So
Right. And he also began to share information with you about many things, about everything, and especially that there are billions of life forms in our universe.
yeah, yeah, exactly. He wanted me to know that Earth is just sort of one little speck in the cosmos that has life, that there's life everywhere else. I mean, yeah, and he said billions and billions of different life forms. He took me to see a few of them on different planets, but there's a whole lot more that I haven't seen. And he just wanted me to know that in the history of humans, we've had this arrogance that we're sort of the only life in the cosmos, and that we're the most important life. And he just said, "You're not even close." I mean, there's lots of races that are way more intelligent than humans on Earth. They have better technology. They can fly between the stars. We're just taking baby steps here. And he wanted me to know that there's lots of other races, and that there's even other human races, civilizations on other planets that are doing way better than we are. So for him, it was sort of like, here, open up your eyes, because there's a lot more to see than what you can see on planet Earth. And one of his messages was, look, at humans really should strive to up their game and become better at not abusing each other or the animals on the planet or Mother Earth, like some of these other races have learned to live in harmony. And that's really our goal, is to get there, because we have too much violence, too many wars, too many conflicts, murders, mass shootings, and all that. That's not necessary. I mean, we need to get rid of that and move on and move up the vibratory ladder. And so his purpose was to show not just me, but he wanted me to write about what I saw in my books, so that other people could read about it and understand that, okay, we're not alone. There's lots of other life forms. Fortunately for us, he said that all the ET races who have visited Earth, and they've been doing this for eons, right from day one. Some of them have even helped to seed life on our planet. They've been around for a long time, and he says they're all benevolent. There's no evil races that have visited Earth. None of them mean us any harm. In fact, they're there to help us, and they can't be too overt about it, because the body of advanced civilizations that sort of runs the galaxy, the Galactic Federation, they have some directives, and one of them is you can't unduly interfere with the development of an inferior race. To them, we're an inferior race, so they can't. So, I mean, their technology would allow them to just come and destroy all of our weapons of mass destruction, but they're not allowed to do that. So they have to let us sort of fumble our way through, hopefully getting to a better place before we do destroy ourselves, because we could do that. And so, but they can't help us in subtle ways. They can send us, like, to a lot of the inventors on Earth that have invented things. They send telepathic messages to them, giving them hints about how to fix this or develop that or invent that. And it's very subtle, and most people don't even know what happens. So they are trying to help us, but they can't just sort of wave the magic wand and fix everything for us. because that would be undue influence, and that they can't do that.
Now, you said that all the races that visited Earth are benevolent races. Now, what do you think about, they've even had quite a few speakers here that are saying quite the opposite, that races such as the reptilians have always been here and they're in sort of in a control of humanity in a way, and that there are other malevolent races that interact with humanity and some that interact with the highest levels of our elite leaders on the planet. What are your thoughts about that?
I've heard about that. I've asked Albert about that. He says that's just not true. He says there are reptilian races in the galaxy for sure, and some of them have visited Earth, but they have no malevolent intent. They're here just to observe what's going on and to help us. So he just says no, that's wrong. He did say that there are some malevolent races living on planets in our galaxy that haven't developed interstellar travel. And so there are some violent races that abuse each other just like we do, but they haven't gotten out of their planetary system yet. And he says that the Galactic Federation, one of the things they do is they watch to make sure that none of these barbaric races actually break out of their planetary system and go wage war on other planets. So they're there to watch. That's why all the people who have been visiting us are benevolent. And one of the interesting things he said is that they keep a careful watch on some of these barbaric races, and when they get to the point where they develop warp drive, where they could travel to other star systems, then they watch them very carefully to make sure that they don't, travel to another star system and try to take over the people on that planet, wage war or whatever. So they're kind of shielding us from some of these evil races. There are reptilians, but they're not evil. They don't control us. So Albert just says, no, that's totally wrong. I've heard those stories before, and I asked Albert, and he said, no, it doesn't happen.
Very interesting. You also spoke of reincarnation and how we get to choose our lives when we come back. And I've heard this many times through many different researchers. Tell us about what your interpretation is.
Well, you see, we're all eternal beings. We're basically, our true home is the spirit side, where we're just basically beings of energy, very high vibration rate. Okay, spirit side is a wonderful place, what some religions call heaven. It's there's no pain or suffering or negative emotions, just unconditional love. And so we choose to incarnate, say, on the denser planes like Earth. I mean, we can incarnate on another planet as a reptilian if we want to. So we've chosen to come here as a human. Earth is a very tough school, so it's not for the faint of heart, because it is really a tough school. And so we come here. Why do we come here? Because we want to experience things and learn lessons that are available on planet Earth that maybe aren't available elsewhere, and certainly aren't available on the spirit side. And so that's all part of our growth and development as souls. We want to experience things, accumulate knowledge and wisdom, and that's just sort of what souls want to do. And so before we incarnate, we prepare a life plan, and we basically set out the significant terms of what's coming up in our life. Like you pick the place you're going to be born, the identity of your parents and siblings, other relatives. You pick a few other milestones, like where you're going to go to school, maybe even who your spouse will be, and part of that life plan, you set out certain directions, certain routes that you hope will get you to encounter the challenges that you need to face and the lessons you need to learn. So it's all a learning experience, and we pick it and we choose it. But it's a cooperative effort, because the people who are your parents and your siblings, for example, they have to agree to be part of your life, and you have to agree to be part of their lives. So it's kind of a group effort to develop your life plan. And quite often we all travel in soul groups, and so you might have a group of souls that you've had many incarnations with before, and you change roles. Like one time you're the father, and the next time you're the mother or the daughter or whatever. You keep on changing roles, and the purpose is to help each other learn the lessons that they want to learn and the challenges they want to encounter. So that's all set out. But the problem is that doesn't make your life etched in stone, because when you're born, you forget that you have a life plan, forget where you came from, and you have free will to take actions and make decisions. And so you can easily, every one of us can easily stray off the course that we hope to follow, and we often do. But Albert says at the end of the day, no matter what kind of life you had, even if you missed all the points that you wanted to hit on your journey, you still learn something. You go back to the spirit side when your body dies, and then you can say, okay, well, this is what I missed. Should I jump into another one and try to include those points again? Or if you've faced a challenge that you could not overcome, you might say, well, I'm going to go back and try to do it again. But nobody forces you to do that. It's not a sort of a wheel of karma thing that makes you come back. If you have negative karma, you can choose to come back here. You can choose the circumstances of your new life, or you can just say, "Oh, to heck with planet Earth, I'm not going back there again." So it's really you're here because you wanted to be here.
Very good. Yeah, I happen to agree with you. The more I hear research about this, and my own intuition feeling is that yes, we do experience multiple lifetimes and existences here on this planet. Um, Something else I found very fascinating about your presentation is when you talk about you actually got to experience the spirit realm and visit with a being called Sophia.
Hmm.
And from there, you got to experience all sorts of different beings like Sasquatch, fairies. Tell us about that experience.
Well, Sophia was the chair of this council called the Council of Wise Ones. Council of Wise Ones is a group of very wise and advanced souls. I mean, they've had countless incarnations on Earth, and so they know exactly what incarnating on Earth is like. And so they don't do that anymore, but they're there to advise people and to look after the incarnations on Earth. So, for example, you're on the other side and you're preparing a life plan. Somebody from the council will go over your life plan with you, make sure it's not too difficult, because if it is, you might end up in suicide. And if it's too easy, you're probably not going to learn very much. So they sort of give you some guidance, but they can't dictate to you exactly what to put in there. Final decision is yours, and so they're there to help. Um, and so yeah, Sophia was a lovely person she had incarnated on Earth and other places, and she had actually incarnated as a reptilian on another planet at one point. So that was the council, and they wanted me to go with Albert to view different places on Earth, different places in the universe, so I could write about it. So the uh, the first stop was after Sophia was to have a conversation with Gaia, consciousness Mother Earth, who really was she's fiercely protective of all of her animals, including humans, her plants, and her ecosystem, and she wants everything to be nicely balanced, everyone to live in harmony. The problem is that humans have become abusive. We abuse one another, we abuse the animals on the planet, and we pollute Mother Earth. And she's really upset at the fact that since the Industrial Revolution, we've been really good at polluting the planet. We noxious fumes and poisons on our soil and garbage in our oceans and rivers, and well, the story. So she's really upset at that. Her warning to me was to tell your fellow humans, we're going to have to change our ways or it could end very badly for us. She said, you may have noticed that recently there's been an increase in the number and intensity of natural disasters on Earth, hurricanes, floods, fires in Australia, whatever. She says, that's going to keep on and get worse unless you guys change your minds and change the course of action of what you're doing. So then after that, I got to see, and I said to Albert, so I was really surprised that our planet had a consciousness. And he said, oh, she's got a few surprises up her sleeve. So he took me to see two of what I would call the fabled creatures of our planet. There's many of them, but two of them. One was a Sasquatch and one was an Irish fairy, which was really quite fascinating. And the Sasquatch was actually in a forest in the Pacific Northwest of America. And she was quite a very intelligent, sensitive, emotional creature. And they've been hiding from humans. They've been around since the very early days. They've been hiding from humans because they think we're violent and aggressive. And they're afraid that if they make contact with us, we'll capture them and put them in a lab and poke and prod them or display them as a circus freak. And so they're afraid of that. But they're very peace loving, so they're not going to sort of go to war with humans. We're going to avoid you guys. So they hide in underground caves. And the interesting thing is that she said they have this, which she called sort of an animal sensitive radar, which allows them to detect humans from several miles away. That really helps them avoid detection with humans. Now, they have been sighted from time to time. People have seen them. They've left footprints occasionally, but they're very, very good at just avoiding open contact. And her hope was that someday humans would become more peaceful and less aggressive, and so that they could come out in the open and say, "Hi, fellow humans, we're here to live peacefully on your planet with you." And the fairy had a similar story. She said that they originally they sort of occupied the island of Ireland, and they had a great time. They lived in peace and harmony, and all of a sudden, humans came along to the island a long time ago, and they thought that initially humans were just bigger versions of themselves, but they soon found out that humans were not very nice people. They were violent and aggressive, just like the Sasquatch found out. And so the fairies have been hiding underground ever since, and they come out just occasionally. Sometimes they're spotted. Again, their wish was, we wish that we were back to the old days before humans were so, violent and aggressive and so dominating of the planet. And so very interesting. And it just goes to show you that where there's smoke, there's usually some fire. People have been talking about Sasquatch and Yeti and Bigfoot for ages. People in Ireland have been talking about the little people for a long time, and they actually do exist. And Albert just wanted me to know that we think that humans are the dominant. Well, we are dominant in a sense, but we're not the only intelligent race. There's other races that have as much intelligence or even more. I mean, the fairies and the Sasquatch can communicate by telepathy. Most humans can't. I mean, we have, somebody said we only use 10% of our brain power. We need to expand that in order to start communicating by telepathy. So very interesting travels, and I really hope that humans can change their ways so that we can, greet these creatures who are hiding from us and let them live out in the open among us.
I agree, and that's exactly what I want to talk to you about in closing is, do you think that during, our lifetime that we could possibly reach the point to where we'll have the communication with these beings, where they won't feel threatened by us all the time, where we can, reach a more enlightened state of humanity? I see a lot more people waking up. I see us slowly headed towards that point, but there's also a lot of obstacles, a lot of things that are keeping us from reaching that. We're keeping ourselves in many ways. Do you see this happening, and does your spirit guide, do they see this happening?
But Albert won't give me specifics, but he says he's very optimistic that we can actually do this, and he won't give a time frame. If he says, he has to be careful. If he says, "Yeah, you guys are going to do it for sure," then a lot of people just give up and say, "Okay, well, I don't need to do anything." And if he says, "No, you guys aren't going to make it," well, then the same thing. People will just give up. So he's saying you have to keep on working at it. I'm optimistic, but I'm not going to give you a guarantee that it'll happen, because we have free will. He can't control our free will.
Right.
So all we can do is he's saying there's really more and more people becoming spiritually enlightened, and that's a good thing. He said that 30 years ago I wouldn't have written my books, and if I did, nobody would read them because we weren't at that stage. And so now there's a lot more people who can, who can appreciate the spiritual message that he's been giving. And people come to these conferences, and there's all kinds of body, mind, and spirit conferences all over the place. More and more people are becoming aware, and that's what we need to do. If you become spiritually aware, you realize that what we really have to do is embrace love and compassion and discard our negative emotions. The negative emotions is what causes all the problems.
Very well said. Garnet, thank you so much for talking with me, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
All right, thank you.
Take care.